Well, maybe for folks that don't understand what this is, or maybe think they have an idea, can you maybe fill in the blanks? Like just sort of talk about what the experience is like for a participant in something like that, or
well,
at least for you, based on your experience.
Yeah, well, as a general rule, it's those 4 letters, and each one, the first 2 have to do with, the first letter is survival, which is just pretty obvious, is just what most people would think of fieldcraft, bushcraft, those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But the reality is, no matter what your phase or paradigm is, in other words, I'm on the run, or I'm isolated, I ejected, I've landed, or I'm in a helicopter, I've had to auto-rotate, and I'm out on the ground, I've lost my primary mission and my means of transportation, so I'm on the ground now. Now I have to evade and at least get away from bad guy areas and into good people areas, or recover myself, get all the way back to some, where there's people who can either recover me or I self-recover. Well, all that evasion, you're still surviving no matter what. That's always there, right? We live, and that's the one thing about today and these things that I think are important, and we've unfortunately lost a lot of them through sort of the suppression of things like Boy Scouts, Outward Bound, mm-hmm. National Outdoor Leadership Schools, those kind of things. Unless you're out west, or most people are more urbanized, and we sit in 70 degrees, dry.
We don't do hard things.
Yeah, so. and instant gratification. Right. And so once you know how to do it, and to me, it's once you learn how to tie your shoes, you know how to do it. You don't think about it. Yeah. And much of this stuff can be. Become it's just something and you can bring back to bear when you need to. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, if you want to, run with it, but you don't have to make it a life study. Now, I have, but for different reasons of teaching and both in the military and then starting a company that just focuses on this. But I think the primary thing is having that baseline. It's I don't want to get too much into the psychology of it, but if people have heard of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, mm-hmm. right? And that bottom rung, the bottom rung is just basically survival. It just keeping those metabolic processes going. Yep. And good things that are
food, heat, shelter.
Yeah, right? But good thing that a lot of our stuff, we don't have to think about breathing. We can focus on that. But then now we have to think about, how am I going to maintain 98.6? How am I going to, if it's not automatic to you, or that you've had training, some sort of, or you lived in that way.
Some exposure to it, yeah.
Because, we call it survival, but, let's face it. Our forefathers, foremothers that grew up, they just called it life.
Yeah.
You know? They say the Inuit don't know anything about Arctic survival. They just live there.
They just do that.
That's right. And that's true. But anyway, I just liked that. And the evasion part of the rest of that SEAR school is just the evasion, again, is just getting back. The next 2 letters are more having to do with, it is the classic POW experience, or at least that whether it's in a wartime in POW, or whether it's somebody being kidnapped or somebody being, mm-hmm. Taken like in a governmental side kind of a situation, which, you can watch the news, it's happened. We still have people.
Every day, yeah.
Right. And whoever the actors are that are, but you are being held against your will. Mm-hmm. And so you have to deal with that in however that manifests. Now that's about as far as, we can go into it, but just obvious, You've seen, there's plenty of movies historically. And, right. And so of course Hollywood does, there's some aggrandizement on that kind of stuff. But from the conflicts, and through the years, the great thing about after I became an instructor and getting access and getting to interview so many, starting back in the mid 80s of these people, I can hardly read fiction anymore because I love reading historical stuff and nonfiction, but it reads like fiction because these people have done, they've actually lived it. You're reading stuff that reads like fiction, and yet this isn't Rambo or, mm-hmm. Commando or some of these. This is people who have done it, have survived, and then sometimes movies are made out of them. For the old school people in the crowd, they would remember things like The Great Escape, but there are actual people behind some of the characters that maybe Steve McQueen played, or in the case of, more recently was Unbroken with Louis Zamperini.
Right.
And anyway, I've gotten to meet so many of these kind of people. And of course, Nick Rowe himself, they never made a movie about it, but his book, 5 Years to Freedom, is a classic amongst...
That one was harrowing. We're talking for people that don't, like bamboo cage.
Yeah,
stuff.
it's not. He was not up in the Hanoi Hilton. He was held down in fourth quarter, basically down in the jungles with people who were at a subsistence level themselves. And so back to the survival, even when you're captive, you think, well, my captor's going to keep all my stuff, you know? And this is that whole counterparty risk, which we'll talk about later, to say, you know, well, what about in a situation where your captors are at a subsistence and survival level themselves?
Yeah.
If you don't do it for yourself, well, you're just going to expire because they're living that way. And that's something that Nick Rose certainly got very good at, even while a captive, that he was going out and doing things that normally you would think would be done when you're maybe surviving and evading. No, he was surviving because surviving. S is first, and it happens, you've got to do it the whole time. And if the last E, which we call, escape, which, it's a part of the, we have a code of conduct in the military, for active duty military. And one of the things is, I will make every effort to escape and aid others to escape. And so that's one of those things that's out there. And that's something that it's a moral code. It's not a UCMJ thing, but that's something that the military is taught. And
it happens.
Yeah. One of the things, though, for a long time is that, even Nick Rose said, they would tell us this, but they never told us how. It's like, so that was one of the things. It's like, okay, there's doctrine and there's what's your good guidance, but then sometimes you got to have the actual kinesiology or the actual knowledge of how to do it. And I think sometimes, some training was lacking, I guess.